Welcome to One Day in Transformation, the podcast where we explore how transformation is not just a process, but an attitude. Today, we welcome a host who knows what it means to be at the top, and then consciously take a step back to rethink. Belinda B. Murray is the founder of Bee Formless, a platform that helps leaders and companies transition from survival-driven growth to soulful, high-flow, conscious leadership. With over 25 years of experience in advertising and communications industry, building a 20 million Australian dollar business and leading 150 employees, Belinda has experienced what happens when success comes without soul, burnout. Today, she combines flow science, neuroscience, self-actualization, and subtractive psychology to shape antifragile leaders and teams, ones that not are only resilient, but leap forward. Belinda, you are joining us today from Melbourne, Australia. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Raina and Andrea. It's so nice to be here. And do you know what? It's so nice to be interviewed versus being like just being the person here that's going to be asked the questions. Anyway, I just wanted to share that. So thank you
Absolutely.
for having me on the show.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time. I mean, as we've said, you're in Australia, so that means 10 hours ahead of where we are at the moment in Munich, in Germany. So it's our beginning of the day and yours is ending. We do have sun, but super cold and a bit of snow left outside. You have beach weather. So, I mean, it couldn't be more controversial from a weather and from a timing condition, but not closer from our mindset. So I'm so super much looking forward to that.
Yeah,
Welcome,
and
Belinda.
quite an
Good to
extreme summer. 1 minute it's cold and it's hot. So yeah, it's interesting. Anyway.
Welcome. Good to having you here. So, Belinda, your journey is special because you know both sides, high performance management and conscious rethinking. Before we dive into your methodology, we would like to know what was the moment when you realized that the classic hustle to grind model no longer works? And how did you develop the idea of Bee Formless from that?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Andrea, in terms of I didn't realize, and that was part of the problem, which led me to the burnout, because I guess I probably did realize, but I was ignoring it. I was ignoring all the signs and all the signals, if you like, when it comes to burnout. And it was years and years of chronic stress. And it was only that really when I stopped that I actually realized and had to go within, and I had no other choice but to, kind of hit rock bottom and then kind of climb my way out of it, that I realized that old world of, hustle is just no longer sustainable. And so it was quite a journey for me, to be honest. It's nearly 4 years now since I hit that rock bottom. And like they say, it can take up to 3 years to fully recover from, severe burnout, which is what I had. And, we were talking pre-show just around energetically, and, Raina, you and I were talking even around just how energetically this year feels different, and it does. And so I guess, for me, the hustle and, like people used to always say to me, "Bea, you're amazing. You look at what you can do. Look at what you can achieve. Look at all the things you can actually handle in 1 minute." And I used to think that was like cool, right? Yeah, I'm awesome. Like, it was my ego kicking on in. But then I realized later it wasn't cool because I had no time to breathe. And I was just utterly constantly in like that fight or flight mode and just running like a crazy woman. And so when I finished in the previous world and role I was in, and it was just this radio silence, if you like, I had to really kind of work through, well, what does, if the world is not about hustle and business isn't about hustle, what does it look like? And so that was in my journey and my exploration, and I took I would say it's probably a full year off to really explore, well, what does it look like when you don't operate in survival mode? And so that's really where the Formless and Bee Formless came about, in terms of I was one existing form that it wasn't sustainable. And so then I had to basically, become like water. And, the classic Bruce Lee, and, reshape and shape and, work through, well, what does it look like in a different way? And so that's where really Bee Formless was founded. But a little fun fact, a little bit of trivia, when I was originally coming up with the company name, I had these designers and they were telling me, you can't have Bee in the name, you can't have Bee in your company name. And so I went with this Formless. And it was only when a year or so later, when I was actually registering my company, my accountant rings me and she goes, "Bee, Formless is taken." And so she said, "You've got literally tonight to come up with a new name for your business because we need to register it by the end of tomorrow." It was kind of moving to next financial year. And I
Okay.
was like, "It's Bee Formless then." And then that's how because I always knew it was that. But anyway, so yeah. So that's a short story of how I came to it
That's
all.
amazing. I didn't even know that. I mean, just yeah, changing a name of a company in between 24 hours. I mean, yeah, absolutely amazing. And I mean,
Yeah, it
that's
was.
fit 100% to you. I mean, be formless. It's just a very nice double type of a meaning. It could be with
Yes.
one E or two B's, and
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's about being active, right? And it was just kind of was meant to be. It was just meant to be. Yeah.
Absolutely. You just spoke about it. It's a bit of an inside-out transformation, a term that immediately resonates from our perspective as well, what we do. But many leaders talk about change, but just don't go one step further. And I mean, it's always like it starts from within. How do you explain to companies that still think in terms of Excel spreadsheets and KPIs and measurement, why self-reflection and flow are just as important as quarterly figures?
Mm. Yeah. I think for me, the problem is never the problem. The brief is never the brief. And so you can go into an organization, you can go into a business and they can say, "We're not hitting our numbers," or, the team's disengaged, "We've got these goals, or a business strategy, but, no one seems to be on board with it." And I always like go into those sorts of situations and I kind of giggle to myself on the inside because we're so used to looking for validation externally, right? And we always look at things as if that it's about the numbers, it's about the business strategy, etc. But actually, what we want to really get under is what's actually happening on the inside. And like a human, we have our own biology system, we have our own biology scales. And I think about businesses in the same way. A business has a heartbeat. A business has, the people, the culture, and everything. And so for me, it's really getting the leaders and the businesses to understand, well, there's more than just a reason why externally this is all happening. So let's get underneath it and then let's work through what's actually happening here. And so I use inside out because rather than start from the external issues, let's look under what's actually happening on the inside and what's happening to a leader, all of those sorts of things. And so yeah, it's interesting. But I think more and more people are starting to understand that things like less is more. Like let's cut through all the crap. Let's understand, well, what is it around, what do we need to subtract to really understand what's happening on the inside of this business to be able to take us forward.
Do you think, and just as an addition to what you just said, I think about 5 years back, I did experience a lot that the culture of, well, that person got a burnout still meant like, oh, he did work a lot. So it was even positively meant. So it was like, oh, he did work his ass off completely. And now he got a burnout. Well, he'll get back and he'll be 150% high performing again. And so that culture of high performers with the risk of getting into a burnout was something which even was appreciated in companies from a cultural perspective, or at least in some surroundings. Not, I think, in general, but there was at least a couple of companies which I learned about which did appreciate that, and even the career was being pushed only for those who had been very close and sharp on the edge of getting into a burnout. I think exactly as you said it. I think that changed over the last maybe 2 to 3 years, at least from my perspective. Or how do you see that?
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because, it's like I was having a conversation most recently around like things like psychological safety and, certain words that are almost for me quite buzzy in a way. It's like we've got these well-being programs for our team and our people. And it's, we do like, I don't know, meditation, like every once a week.
Yoga.
They're all again coming back to like this inside out approach, right? They're just surface. They're just surface, I guess, solutions to actually what is happening here. And it used to happen to me, like I used to have these meltdowns. And, if you look at my situation when I was, kind of when I fully did burn out, it had been going on for years. I was stuck in this really crazy cycle where, I'd work my butt off and then I'd crash and burn or I'd have an explosion, and then I'd take some time off, a week or so off, and then everyone would be like, she just needs a week off, she'll be back. And within a day or two, I was thrown right back into it all, into a system that was just crazy. And so it was just like this, you were in this kind of hamster wheel where it would kind of break down, then it'd go again, and you break down and you go again. And so for me, that really is still, I think, in a way, somewhat alive. And it's only really the leaders or the people that are here to really fundamentally make the change that is actually required to make the difference are the ones that are going to be able to thrive throughout this world we're currently in. Because even like the start of this year, I'm not sure about you both, but I'm looking around and I've purposely been quiet on the likes of LinkedIn and things like that, because all I'm seeing is push, push, push. What's your goals? What's your plan? All of that. And I'm like, we're just putting more pressure on ourselves. We're causing this constant urgency. Whereas what if we just paused? What if we were able just to be a bit more present, a lot more present, and just slowed everything right down? So I think that's part of the big challenge we still have upon us. I also think like the term burnout, I think, that's become almost in a way a bit of a buzzword too, because it's like, hang on, before we just start calling out burnout, let's understand again what's actually happening here on the inside. Is this person truly exhausted, or are they bored in their role? There's a lot of questions you can dig into to understand, well, actually what's happening here, to then be able to make a diagnosis.
Absolutely. Fully agree.
So let's talk about work culture. So I think Australian is different than Europe. So less hierarchy, more can-do mentality, maybe. Did that play a role when you developed Bee Formless, or do you see global challenges such as burnout or crisis of meaning as being the same everywhere?
Andrew, I keep calling you Andrew and it's Anthea. How embarrassing! I'm so sorry. Like, I'm
No,
just
it happens most of the time. Even the automatic.
Oh my gosh! Anthea, it's again like I think it's I hear what you say when you say Europe's different to Australia. I'm not sure. I'm actually not too sure. I think that in all the, I guess, having the privilege of talking to a lot of leaders around the world in the past, since February of last year, I think there's some really big common themes that are circulating everywhere. Like, I think a lot of people think Australia's got it all. We're the lucky country. We've got it all sorted. We only work 5 and that's it, sort of thing. But I think since AI's come in, and I think even pre-AI, when it comes to, high performers or people that, have always, work's always done a bit, like really defined who they are, been a big part of their identity. I think it's kind of a global societal problem at the moment. And I think that's why as a society, we have to all come together as, change makers, trailblazers, to go, we're saying no to this old world. The old world of hustle is not sustainable, and we have a choice. And if we decide that we're actually going to do what we need to do to fix it, then we're going to have a really happier and more possibilities in that new world that we're in. We're in it.
Yeah, I would fully agree. I mean, I just read about that the algorithm is leading to an algorithm fatigue. So AI at the moment is leading that everybody's getting tired through what's happening with AI and through AI. You're not even able to just decide whether it's real or artificially created, and all of that we're constantly flushed with from day by day in social media, in news, and what we read and what we listen to. I mean, all of that I think is exactly what you said. We need to pause, and we need to maybe slow down in certain areas just to get back to what we are and what we should be, and not turn into something which is just running behind AI and everything which is created by a couple of tech bros from the US mostly.
Yeah, it's so true, Raina. Like it is so true, and I'm a massive believer in it because what's happening is, and I say this to businesses and leaders all the time, is like if we pause, and I know when I actually finally came to this realization through my soul screaming at me that when we pause and when we are more present, we know what we get the answers from within, right? The answers come from within us. All the solutions are solved from within us. And yet, half the reason why we've got so many problems right now in the world, whether it's in business or, whatever, is because we're just not able to listen to actually what is fundamentally happening to then be able to find the right solution, to then be able to really solve the actual problem that we need to solve. Mm.
100% agreed. I mean, it's mostly people are just hushing from one decision to the next. In particular, if you go to C levels to the CEOs, which I experienced myself in the past a lot, that
Yeah.
there were, I mean, very very complex topics, and you had 5 minutes in the board or maximum 10 minutes to explain that, and you say, well, guys, how should I do that? This is super systemic thinking, and it requires an understanding of a lot of different things. How should I be able to combine that? Yeah, you got not more than 10 minutes. And even you are able to explain in 10 minutes, and then a decision is being taken, yes or no, we do or we don't do anything. Or if you're not able to explain in 10 minutes, then you just don't come up with that. And I mean, that
Yeah.
is something that is ridiculous in the complexity of issues we are dealing with day by day. Just to expect from everyone that you're able to just compress everything into very short ones. But I mean, if you see that in the latest development, in particular, young people are just based on social media consumption and what they are dealing with day by day, not able to just focus longer than 90 seconds on a topic. I mean, that is ridiculous. 1.5 minutes focusing on something, and then you're distracted to something else. I think we have to change systemically, and we have to come to new methodologies maybe, and just
Agree.
use it as a bridge maybe towards what we are anyhow
Yeah.
very interested in talking about, which is the
Yeah, and
formless
just
method.
and one point to add on that, I had a little test on myself over the break. Like in Australia that, we do have, compared to the US and things like that, we do take, have more holidays, I think, annual leave throughout the year. But I guess it's different when you've got your own company, you're a founder, startup, building. But I did purposely, I think from like the 23rd or the 24th of December, I was just like, I just need to turn my laptop off for the next 2 weeks, 10 days. And I actually turned it off. And I actually didn't go on to any sort of like AI, kind of, agents or anything like that in terms of I didn't use chat. I didn't use anything. And I noticed a difference in terms of my cognitive load. Like it was just not overloaded. Sure, I was still on, checking my socials and things like that. But I actually really noticed the difference when I wasn't working with chat or whatever AI tool you use. And I think again, Rainey, you've brought that up, and that whole distraction piece around children, etc. as well. They don't switch it off. They don't switch off anything. So that's the difference. They've been born into this. Whereas, so yeah, I think there's an opportunity there in itself to be able to give yourself some grace and go, I'm just going to have a little break from it all.
And we require all of that. And then from time to time, you need to have a break of that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So your formless approach is based on a cycle. So learn, unlearn, relearn, and active recovery. That sounds simple, but radical. What is the first thing executives need to unlearn in order to be truly transformative?
Yeah, it's funny. I've been talking about the cycle a little bit, like all the methodology a fair bit lately. And when I first created it, I took my time out and, I took time out, but I was also doing a lot of research and, kind of going down rabbit holes. And I went and studied through a company at the time called the Flow Research Collective. And it was all around flow science and basically it's I don't know if you've heard of Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, but he's like the godfather of flow, and it's how you can feel and perform at your best. I call it shining your brightest. And basically that there's this flow cycle that is, neuroscience and flow science, kind of based essentially. And I was looking at that, and then I was looking at learn, unlearn, relearn, because that's not new. That's not a new language. Like there's, what I thought about is this needs to be flipped on its head, because learn for me is around, the way it's traditionally used is let's learn more, let's do more. And I'm like, yeah, but that's still adding to the cognitive load, isn't it?
Sorry, I'm having trouble here.
Siri's just talked to me. And so basically what I did is I was like, I think there's a different way to look at this. So I was looking at the flow cycle. And then I was looking at basically how do I put the flow cycle, and how do I flip this learn, unlearn, relearn on its head, but also then incorporate what is active recovery in terms of, if you think about like an athlete, a professional athlete, they're not on 24/7. They have, their seasons, and they have their off seasons, for example. And so I started to practice it on myself. And so the learn is really about the ability to become aware of what no longer is serving you. And so having a look at everything, if you're going into a business, or if you're looking at yourself as whether you're a leader or, just an individual, and you're operating from survival mode. You're exhausted from the minute you wake up. You come home, you're exhausted. So it's like, okay, well, actually, what's happening here? And so having a look at everything in your environment within you, and starting to really understand, well, what isn't actually serving me anymore? Why am I getting stuck in this survival mode? And so that is the learn piece. It's learning about, well, what's not working versus what do we need to add to learn more, if you like. And so once we're aware of what's no longer working for us, and there's an opportunity to get out of this survival mode, well, then we subtract it. This is when we apply the subtractive psychology. We don't add to the solution. We subtract to be able to then reimagine and create and become formless, if you like. And so that's the unlearn piece. And so what I had to do in my own life, when I had my burnout, my period of kind of, I guess, I don't like calling it a crisis, but it was a full, I was like, yeah, it was exactly that, really. I had to really look at what was no longer serving me and what did I want to take forward into my new world. And so that was where I really started to apply the methodology. And so then I went on this, unlearn phase for a good period of time to really reimagine and create what was possible. And so that's really where the Formless and the Bee Formless and the business model came together, because once I was really clear on what was my strategy, what was my plan in life, in leadership, and in business, it was then around, well, what do we do? How do we test and implement it? Which is this relearn piece. And the reason I've got this active recovery part of the methodology is because we should always be ensuring that we've got active recovery within our week and our day. But, coming off the back of a big project or something, fundamental in your life, how do we stop and celebrate, and how do we reflect, and how do we then have the ability to be able to go evolve? And that's the continuous cycle of the methodology.
Excellent. You just explained it, what you combine, talking about flow science, talking about neuroscience, about psychology. So I'm pretty sure that we do have a couple of people now listening who are super interested how you're translating that into practical tools, and particular for maybe CEOs. And I know from my past a couple of, and you know that stories as well, who that even stopped drinking because they didn't have time to go to the restroom. So if there's a CEO saying, well, all of that sounds super interesting, but I don't even have time for mediation, and I don't know, how do you explain that, and how do you translate that into practical tools?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So basically, I've got tools for each phase of the cycle, and so essentially, the learn is really about, okay, well, let's just go through. I generally go in and I do a big, I guess, ask questions, but also have online tools where it's kind of understanding what's working, what's not working. I'm just going to give it the most simplest, basic form. But I look at the person as well as the business. It's not just the business, and understanding, from a business perspective, do they have a strategy? What does the team look like, etc. But then I do ask, I look at the foundations of the individual or the leader to understand, well, how are they operating? Well, how are they sleeping? How are they, what does their day look like? This is going to sound really ridiculous, but what's their schedule look like? Like, show me what your schedule looks like. Some CEOs, and they get quite offended and say, why would you want to look at my schedule? Because the minute I look at someone's schedule, I can see if it's back to back to back to back to back. It's like, you don't have time, but you're busy being busy. So let's kind of really understand what busy being busy means, because it's always time. And so it's really looking at, understanding the foundations of the business, foundation of the leader and the team, and really getting to the crux of that. And then generally it's, this is my diagnosis of what I think actually needs to be subtracted, let go of, to be able to then move into the unlearn. And that really is then, comes down to developing, having workshops, team workshops, workshops with the CEO to really map out or reimagine, well, what could this strategy look like? If there's a block in the learn stage, then what we do. And then generally so playbooks are generally come out of that the unlearn stage. And then really, basically when we move into the relearn, it's then applying whatever we've created in the unlearn, from whether it's a new strategy or whatever it is, it's then how we go ahead and implement it.
As a real playbook, amazing. So if you're listening right now and you're much, much more interested to learn more what it is about and what Bee Formless is all about, first of all, we will put that in the show notes. So you'll find the link directly to Bee and to Bee Formless then in our show notes, or directly reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy connecting you to Bee and to Belinda. So if you allow me, Belinda, I would like to go a bit more into your personal story again. And you just explained it. You've experienced firsthand how success can turn into exhaustion. Many of our listeners might be in similar positions. And so therefore, I would like to ask, what was your biggest mistake on the path to resilience, and what would you do maybe differently today?
My biggest mistake, and I'm not a person that believes in regrets. I think that we get so caught up on shame and regrets and things like that. But you know what? It's all part of our growth and our evolution, if you ask me. But some people have said this to me when I was going through it. They said, you're going to look back on this time and you're going to be really grateful for it. And at the time, I was in such a hurry to just to bounce forward and push through it to get to the other side. And yet, call me woo-woo, but I'm not. But, the universe, I just kept getting slapped in the face. Every time I kept pushing and trying to control something, it was just like, no. And so I think sometimes I think about the biggest mistake was just I should have just surrendered from the very beginning when I was, on the floor, versus trying to pick myself up and trying to be that strong, courageous, resilient woman who was just so used to go, go, go. That's what I would do differently.
Thank you. And really appreciate to get such kind of very personal and very insightful information from you. Thank you for that.
Thank you. So in Germany, we talk a lot about work-life balance, but you talk about high flow conscious leadership. Is that just a new term or really a paradigm shift? And how do you actually measure soulful performance?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've coined it, I've created it, and it's soulful, high flow, conscious leadership. It's a bit of a tongue tie. It's probably a bit too long. Who knows? Maybe I'll
Yeah.
down the track. But it comes back to Raina, your question around my methodology and my tools, and I probably didn't explain them as well as I could have. But it's always like trying to explain them versus showing actual. I'm one of those sorts of people. But here's the thing, right? I think about leaders of today and the next gen of leaders, and the leaders that will thrive, I won't say succeed, but will absolutely thrive, are those that have the ability to be soulful. And what I mean by soulful is the ability to be able to be intuitive, have that empathy, have that caring, lead from the heart, leading from within. and that whole within. And then the high, it's kind of all a bit around back to front. But, the high flow is really around, we still need performance at the end of the day. Like, we can't be all up here and, performance will always exist. But it's how do we perform as an individual and also as a collective where we are ultimately shining our brightest and feeling and performing our best. So that's why I really do bring in those tools in terms of when you are operating in flow state, you are generally 400 to 700% more creative. You have
Wow.
300 and something percent, 300, I think it's 350% more learning and memory. You're 500% more productive and you acquire your skills and learning faster. And so there's real science behind this. And so for me, I've purposely kept performance in there. And then the conscious bit is around being present, right? How are we present? How are we offering more presence? How are we, having that awareness around not just ourselves as leaders, but also as our team. And so it's really around, presence, purpose, people, and performance. And that for me is what a soulful, high flow conscious leader is and will shape and will be the future generation of leaders.
Thank you very much. And I didn't even know about that number. So this is impressive. I mean, 500%
Yeah.
more creative. And I mean, just in case anybody still asks that question out there listening to us, how did the universe connect Bee and us? Well, you said at the beginning, leading by heart. And I mean, we're hot print. So whatever we do is leaving a hot print as well. So there's the connection very much
Yeah.
more visible than you probably have ever seen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So
Thank
true.
you.
Yeah. I love looking at heart print. You need it bigger. You need the bigger, the bigger branding. There comes my brand.
Straight behind us.
So let's start in our tradition. So every guest adds a song to our podcast playlist. So which track is right now stuck in your head or reminds you of a key moment in your transformation?
It's so funny. You're going to laugh at me. Have you heard that song, Sitting on the Dock of the Bay?
Yes.
Sitting on the dock of the bay. I can't sing, but you know what I mean? Anyway, it came on the other day and I just was sitting there and I was in the car and I was driving and I was like, just the start of it. And it's just got this energy and vibe, but it was really, it's quite calming, right? And for me, I was just listening to it and listening to it in a way where I was like, I feel so peaceful. I feel such at peace right now in where I'm going and where I'm headed. And I was just like, yeah, I'm sitting on the dock of the bay, watching the
wonderful.
time roll away. Woo! I was like, yeah, I'm not worrying about time anymore. I'm just like, let it roll away. And I think that is like the biggest piece of advice. I am still, ambitious. I am still have, plans to, I won't say conquer, but, I have big plans to make positive and impactful change in the world. But it's doing it in a way that is not how I previously did it. And I think there's huge opportunities for everyone to actually just stop for a second, sit on the dock of the bay.
I love that.
And watch the time roll away. Because do you know what? Work will always be there tomorrow. Everything will always be there. But if we were able to just be able to pause for a second and listen to see what's possible, that for me is inside out transformation in itself.
Absolutely amazing. And to those of you not knowing what we're talking about in regard of our playlist, we do have the tradition of creating a playlist on Apple Music. And we are feeding that. With each episode, we are adding another song to that playlist. So we've started this year with the first season with Frank Sinatra, and then from Copenhagen, from Denmark. Then we went to Rome in Italy, and it was, I think, Freddie Mercury
Yes.
and Queen who got added. Now we are in Melbourne, Australia, and adding sitting at the dock of the bay. I love that. I mean, this is amazing, and in particular with that.
It was just so like I could have come up with such all these other songs, but I just feel like that's where I'm at right now. And even like the other big thing for me is like it's the first time ever in my whole entire life I'm coming into 2026 where I'm actually not setting all these intentions and all these goals. Sure, I've got a plan. I know my plan for my business. I know my plan for me. But I'm not like going 100 miles an hour at the start of this year. And I do feel like I am sitting there on the dock of the bay. I know I keep repeating that, but in terms of just letting things, what if I just let things happen the way they're meant to for a bit?
I love that.
So,
It's absolutely amazing.
Mm.
So let me be a bit provocative maybe, and don't take that as a personal offense, please. But you say success without soul is not sustainable. I agree on that. Many companies still measure success in terms of revenue and market share. And so what would be your argument to a board member who says that's just all esoteric nonsense?
yeah, yeah, I know. It's a good one, right? And that's one part of the big, I guess, what's the word? I guess one of my big focuses for this year is to prove that it isn't. Like, at the end of the day, we can keep chasing numbers and make that the priority and all these targets, etc. But there's proven research out there that shows, you can keep chasing that, but then the people on the team bottom out. And so really there's an opportunity for both to work together hand in hand. And so I'm not suggesting that we completely ignore, profitability and those sorts of targets, etc. But I think we just have to look at things in a more interconnected way. And so then how do we interconnect the people, the team and the business together so that we have a team and a group of people that are, feeling and performing at their best, they're shining their brightest, but also we're then seeing the profit not just, kind of hit the number, but actually there's abundance created. And so for me, I think this is when it comes back to the proven stats around, well, it actually, applying flow science tools, it does create more creativity, more productivity, all of those stats. It's a challenge though, because there's still a lot of, CEOs out there that are like, eh, go away, like that's like you've got soft, your targets are soft. But here's my challenge back to them is, well, there is no such thing as separating hard skills and soft skills, hard targets as soft targets. They all have to come together and they have to be interconnected. And I think that is the future and part of the next leader, soulful, high flow, conscious leadership, whatever. But it for me is, the leaders and the businesses that are in this new world, they're already doing this. So it's only the leaders that are stuck in the old world are operating and have that mindset. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question though.
It does absolutely. And the next generation of soulful leaders, I would love to see that. And I would love to see majority of leaders being soulful and trained by you and formless leaders.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Profitability, you've just reminded me, because profitability I probably need to throw back into. I have got profitability in there, but I think it's an important one. But I think it's how the two come together. And it can work. Yeah. And the
I like
value in
Absolutely.
it. Mm.
So, Belinda, if you could establish one rule for the working world in 2026, something that prevents burnout or promotes innovation, what would it be?
Did you say a rule? What, a rule as
Yeah.
such? Okay.
A rule which everybody has to stick with. A
Yeah.
global rule which is effective for everyone starting on February 1st.
Anthony, can you ask me the question one more time, please? Sorry, I just want to make
Yes.
sure I'm.
So just one rule for the working world in 2026. So just start tomorrow
Yeah,
or next week. Something that prevents burnout or promotes innovation.
yeah, it's a simple one. I think for me, comes back to the power of the pause and the power of being present and having a 15 to 30-minute pause break. And when I'm talking about pause, no phones, no laptops. You are sitting there in what I call none time. And you are just sitting there or you're walking, but you have nothing that can distract you to basically be able to hear what is being downloaded to you, what are the insights or intuition that's coming to you. And I think that we need to be practicing that. So my rule would be that we have to, I'll say 7 days a week, practice power of the pause. I have to keep practicing it myself, like this is the thing. I'm not perfect. I'm so imperfect. It's not funny. Like I'm giving everyone all this advice and telling you everything. That's the beauty of this formless methodology as well. I live and breathe it because I'm constantly learning, unlearning, relearning active recovery. So, this is a rule for me too.
And I mean, if you're now at the moment already talking about practical ideas, we have another tradition, which is the 1 week in transformation challenge. Last week, we've had Daniel, who was giving us the tip to be more positive and celebrate even little progress in sustainability in particular. So this time, I would love to hear maybe something small but effective, an exercise everybody who is now listening to us could try, even starting maybe today or tomorrow, and something which probably you do yourself each day.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great one. I have this tool, and it is part of Learn, the step one Learn, and it's around resistance, because we all have a resistance in us, that the good old amygdala loves to tell us, like, no, you can't do that, and stay in this fight and flight mode, and we have to be operating from survival mode. And so, again, when I was going through my transformation inside out, I explored a lot around resistance and what I was resisting, around what was holding me back. And so I've got this little exercise, and I generally ask people to do it for 2 weeks. And it's essentially, what did you resist today? And generally I ask people to think of 2 things. Now, it can be in life, it can be as a leader, it can be in your business. And what did you resist today, today, and how did it make you feel? And so you first write that down. And then you write down, the second part of the question is, when you pause and understand what you've resisted. And then the next bit is, then what if you pushed through that resistance and became fearless, and how would that make you feel? And so I always get these leaders coming to me going, I've got nothing. I'm not resisting anything. It's everybody else. It's this. And I'm just like, again, I giggle to myself because I was the same. I was like, yeah, I'm not resisting anything. I'm not resisting change. And it's like, and then they come back and they're like, oh my gosh. Yeah, it's a great exercise. And I really encourage people to write it like a journal rather than typing, just like writing, because you're getting it out. You're getting that cognitive load out. It's subtracting from the brain. There's whole stats around, writing, good old pen and paper versus, using the computer or the phone. So that would be my one,
That's smart,
micro.
right?
Yeah, we'll definitely do that ourselves. Like we always
Yes.
pick up the challenges of our guests, which we are hosting.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would be super interested to all of our listeners out there. What is the topics you would write down on your piece of paper? What did you resist? I would love to just discuss on that, and maybe you can comment
one.
here in the
Yeah.
podcast or on social media. Then.
Yeah. Yeah. And it happens, and like and people will go to me, oh my God, this happened today, and I was like so angry. So like, it's a whole mind, body, soul feeling as well that comes up. And then they're like, but actually I did this, I then pushed through, or I challenged myself to push through, and then I felt like, oh, I got it out. And it's like, there you go, Mm.
Amazing. Thank you.
So we're coming to an end. So Belinda, what gives you hope right now, or motivation, or a good feeling? So not a big picture, but maybe some specific example from your work environment.
Gosh, there's so much. It's tough being an entrepreneur sometimes, and a founder. You have your highs and your lows and all your in-betweens. And here's the thing, we all oscillate between survival and thriving mode. So again, you can't always be up. You can't. It's like that thing around toxic positivity, right? So, it is a dance. But I mentioned before coming into the show that I feel energetically really excited about the possibilities heading into 2026. It's a year of the fire horse, I should say. We've just finished a 9-year cycle, and we're in the first of a new cycle. But I just do think that having conversations like this, and the ability to connect with other people, again, like yourselves around the world, who are making these impactful and positive changes, we're going to beat the baddies. Like, we are going to beat the baddies, and AI is here, and it's not going away, and it is another revolution, but it's no different to, it probably is a bit in terms of, but we've had a revolution of the computer. We had the industrial revolution. We had, the revolution of the email. Things will kind of settle down. So I just think it's going to give us the ability to get back to what we should be doing as humans and living the way we're meant to be living. And so that excites me in business, and that excites me in life, and that excites me as a leader as well. Because I just think the other thing here is that you can't separate life and business and leadership. It's all interconnected.
Fully agreed. Thank you very much for that. And so after this conversation with Belinda, I have so many ideas. Should we maybe start all our meetings with an Unlearn minute? What do you think? Or integrate maybe flow science into all of our customer projects? Or simply we should probably force every CEO to meditate and at least once per quarter. What do you think?
We simply do the same as always, Rainer. We are trying to take over the world, or at least bring Belinda's method to every German company, because one thing is clear: transformation starts in the mind.
One day
In transformation.
Thank you very much, Belinda. That was just amazing. And it is just great to shape the future together with you. And exactly as you said it, we're all together in this. And it's just amazing having the ability talking about such kind of things with people on the other side of the world and without a hustle. Thank you for that.
No, thank you. And energy is everything, right? Like, this is energy. We're energetically all connected. And so, that energy check-in is super important too. So, no, thank you. I've thoroughly enjoyed connecting with you both today. So thank you.